Howdy of you delicious people, I'm here today to view Young Frankenstein, a movie that is to go on and really just be timeless. Every time I've probably watched this, probably a handful of times at this point, like, I still go on and I find things that I've missed through this movie, or I've gone on to still laugh at a lot of these jokes. Like, they still land, they still work. And cause of course it does, because it's a freaking Mel Brooks movie. Like, all these movies are just timeless classics that eventually, at some point, people will probably go on and point out what is to be their favorite Mel Brooks movie. Let me know in the comments below if you want to go and do so. So, I had gone on and just recently seen another Frankenstein film, and when going on into this movie, there are little bits and pieces that are similar to like the Mary Shelley Frankenstein film, but if anything, like, there's a lot of harder directions that that other movie goes into, where this movie, of course, is more lighthearted, and it is to go on and try to do like a monster like rampaging through town, but most of the rampaging is just kind of him running away from things or going on and doing things that kind of land into much more humorous like notions. And so within this, like, I haven't yet to have still gone on and watched like the Boris Karloff original black and white Frankenstein movie, but of course there is that iconic line of "It's alive, it's alive." Yeah, I've gone on to, of course, at least known of that thing through other movies like Weird Science and stuff like that. That eventually is to kind of showcase that thing. But at some point, I might just go on and just watch the original black and white Boris Karloff Frankenstein film. So within this movie, we realize that like a lot of these characters, we have like Frodrick, uh, Frankenstein, um, and we have Inga, we have Igor, we have the monster, we have all these characters that I think are to kind of be slightly skewed, probably for maybe some copyright things. But regardless, like, when you slap the word Frankenstein on this, you still have to pay some kind of just rights for the name to be used, I'm assuming. Uh, but yeah, so for this film, I am to really just go on and really find that this movie is still just like so well put together, even though like the more and more that I've seen it, like, I'm starting to see like the kind of maybe not as productive parts of this film, but like how this movie is kind of much more like kind of very padded out, but like still there is a lot of just really good humor here that still makes this movie, in my opinion, great. It still makes me want to go on and check this out. If you've never gone and never seen this movie, then I would definitely have it be a must watch recommend. Because it is to almost kind of be like 10 movies you see before you die. Like, Young Frankenstein is probably end up being one of those. Um, Oddly enough, it should be on people's bucket lists if you are to go on and be looking for movie and show recommend things. But so, if you've never seen it, there is always that person. But anyways, so and at some point, I hope that goes on and just has you just watch all the other Gene Wilder films, because they are actually rather entertaining as well, regardless of just rung of actual um, notoriety of them. But anyways, because there's stir crazy and there's a lot of Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder projects that are really good. I feel, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Anyways, So young Frankenstein goes on to have Frederick here. Frederick. He is to, of course, go on and to find out that his father has passed away, leaving him with some kind of will and ownership of this big, huge, lavish castle that he is to make his way back to. Frederick wanting nothing to do with his family heritage and wanting to not be attached to the same word as even Frankenstein, because he used to state that his name is consistently Frankenstein to a lot of people, to avoid any kind of even name recognition connected to that family for the darkened history that is to be left in that past. So Frederick goes on to make his way into his father's home, to be so seduced by this building through music that leads him into finding his father's notes, to just quickly succumb to the fact that, like, oh my god, my father was so close um to his experimentation. Like, I need to go on and I need to finish my father's work. And so I feel that the actual, like, Frankenstein stuff, like, there's not, I feel like, at any point any kind of, like, science stuff that they bring into this, because this movie is a comedy. You have to spend a lot more time on the jokes than the actual science behind what they're actually doing. Like, and then also there are so many other Frankenstein movies that go into that, that this movie is just be like, no, like, we got to focus on how many more jokes that we can go on and tell. God dang, like, Igor in this movie is so good, and the actor behind him does not get enough god dang credit for being such amazing comedian, as well as also the people that are working around him within this movie. Like, everybody is just banging on all cylinders in this film, and there is also, I think, to be some kind of like, just some, like, innuendos, and to go on and just be like the whole, uh like, Miss Inga, can you go on and elevate me? And Inga's like, elevate you, like, right here? Yes, lift me up and come on. Oh yeah. Yeah, like, there is those kind of just pauses that are going like, aha, like, yeah, like, and then also where Froderick is going on and being in the train, and kind of like the passengers that are in the back, just kind of delivering some good comedy in there as also. Uh, but yeah, so, but there is to go on and be so many jokes within this movie that will be takeaways if how rarely you've gone on and seen this. Like I think my favorite one is the one where Froderick is in the bed and he's talking about destiny. Like, that's the one thing that I always can go on and randomly in my head at some point just be like chiming away about. Um because bizarrely that's my one retaining thing that is to always be from this film, besides just kind of remembering, like, okay, when I was going into this, like, okay, I remember this, I remember that. And there's some stuff that I have no memory of which was like the beginning coffin scene. I'm like, I never have got on to, I think, seen this in my life, but I feel like I've seen everything else for the most point, with the exclusion of just some certain things here and there that I am familiar with, but, like, don't know the ins and outs of, because that happens. Because my mind eventually becomes a blur. But anyways, so Frederick goes on to, of course, through electricity and kites, create this monster that eventually is to slip out of this huge, humongous castle which makes no sense, and goes on a rampage. He never really murders or kills anyone, but he goes on a rampage. And here is also the interesting thing is like this town is to be before like Frederick really has like the Frankenstein monster at any point just like really showing real signs of real existence within this town. We already have like Inspector I think Kemp and like the whole town just kind of suspicious of Frankenstein here. And like is he gonna follow in his father's footsteps? What? His footsteps. Oh, his footsteps. Oh, yeah, yeah. Gotcha. Um, and so we have this town that is already very suspicious of Frankenstein or Frankenstein. That logically, like we would have had to have assumed that everybody is going on and definitely like in detail uh like making sure that this guy is to be as soon as possible like in and out of this town uh or going on to figure out a way to like hey man whatever you doing whatever you're doing hopefully your town doesn't want to go on and second guess any bit about it. And so oddly enough, like the credits of this movie says that uh, the Frankenstein monster is just called the monster here, but then also within the dance number, it is be called the creature. So I'm like, okay, so creature, monster, does it make a difference? But I'm just gonna call him monster, I guess, because that's what IMDb states. Uh, like I think a lot of stuff was just tweaked and changed because of copyright things for some to just avoid like there was a lot of things that were just kind of like well hey this is slightly tweakingly different and not the exact same, so there was some copyright things that were just kind of twisted and manipulated possibly through this process. But speaking of the dance number, this dance number thing by the later half of the film makes this movie the most unique out of all of the other Frankenstein things because none of the other Frankenstein things does much of music or does a dance number. And for how at one point Mel and Jean were to go on and talk together, and Mel asks Jean, it's like, well, do you really think that we should go on and do the dance number by the later half of this film? And Gene was like, yeah, like it's gonna be a big laugh, it's gonna be a big joke, people are gonna love it. And there was just kind of some hesitation there, and Gene was like, no, like I believe so strong. And Mel was like, no, I was wanted to see, like I just wanted to uh like see how passionate you were about it, because maybe for probably Mel like that could have gone on and been a difficult thing uh to want to put into this. So maybe it was just like how passionate was Gene about this whole situation, and whether or not it was to go on and actually just work for the film. And it really does, I feel it's to be the one standout thing that is to give this movie uh like for what packed just jokes it has, like the dance number I feel is to just kind of be the kind of the break from that, and is to kind of go on. And for how I'm to probably state that I don't like songs or if it's a musical that's different, but like I don't like to tend to have like songs and stuff in movies and shows because it feels it's just like oh this is just a stretching thing. Whereas this specific situation, it's different in my opinion. Again, this is what makes this movie so unique to a billion of the other things that are to go on and actually exist in our time of things. Uh, to go on and look at the Robert De Niro Frankenstein, the Mary Shelley story, and this, I am to go on and see like certain slivers of that story that are to go on and look similar to this one when I'm really looking at the entire film from a long stretch of time of actually seeing it now and seeing the whole hanged man situation and seeing how uh, this Frankenstein monster is to look compared to that one and just to really just kind of get the feel of what they're trying to do in this story and like make it a lighthearted uh comedic thromp, whereas like the Mary Shelley thing has some kind of flavoring that feels like some comparison to this, but like really like that takes a lot of stuff in a very hard, dark, disfiguring direction. And so yeah, so that will go on and just be like, well, hey, I've probably been seeing a load of other like Frankenstein things. I've seen Ein Frankenstein, and that becomes a more action-packed movie and what have you. But that's going to be my my more closer comparisons to the Frankenstein actual films. There's a lot of other like Frankenstein stuff that kind of breaks down some more sciencey stuff, whereas this just kind of focuses on like them kind of breaking things down and stretching it out with the comedy, but stretching out is like that's to just go on and just um, be a it's not to be a dig into this film. It's to anything be like to this movie's benefit. It has so much comedy that it can really just go on and be a bigger aspect of this film. So this movie is great. Where can you go on and check out Young Frankenstein? Uh, Oddly enough, I think at some point this movie was also in a number of countries to be called Frankenstein Junior. If people can go on and correct me if there are some countries or if maybe I don't think that this was renamed anything at some point. Uh, but also I had stumbled upon uh, a cartoon show called Frankenstein Junior. Also, so it's like, okay, what is to go on and legitimately be the thing that people are interested in? And I'm assuming it's probably this one said under a different name instead of uh, like a cartoon show, but I could be I could be really wrong. And that'll be fine too because I can check that out at some point in the meantime when I get some time to check that out, and that could be a fun adventure. So, with that said, you can go and check out this on an app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, or Moopsy, Moopzzi. Both of these apps you are going to go on and need a mobile device. I would recommend more of a like a tablet or an iPad just so you can go on and get a like a bigger viewing of a film or whatever. But I used to go on and watch a lot of movies and shows on my phone also. So I can completely understand the affordability of people or whatever people are to go on and have their mobile usage end up being uh, and you would go on and be able to check out this movie as well as a bajillion others for absolutely free without any kind of subscriptions or anything like that, instead of going on and probably questioning where exactly this movie is to be put together, because I think that Young Frankenstein may be available on YouTube somewhere, but again, I have no idea. Let me know in the comments below what you have gone on to watch Young Frankenstein on if you've been watching it recently. Um, But anyways, maybe you rented it, maybe you bought it, maybe you have the Blu-ray or DVD thing. Because I'm sure I probably do too at some point, somewhere. Do I? Let me pause here. Let me see. Aha! I'm not a liar. Yeah, I have all my DVD physical media like right next to me, so I'm like, yeah, I'll just see if I actually have a copy of it, um, because I still like to just hold physical media. But then again, uh, really, I have conveniently so many apps that more than likely I'll probably have to go on and just realize like when it's a good time to just kind of let some of this physical media just go, even though it's just heartbreaking for me to make that kind of decision. But like logically, like considering I have the convenience of apps and stuff, like it's just physical media just to be like, but maybe there's just gonna be one movie that I miraculously just still have and I can't find anywhere, and I can just pop in the Blu-ray or I think a lot of it would just be like shows. Like I think shows are more iffy, whereas movies, like you're more likely to find a movie seemingly anywhere. There's a ton of stuff that I've gone on to find in my fairly recent bit of days here where I wanted to see something, but it was extremely hard to find. So I just went on and had to watch it just on the a website somewhere on Google. And anyways, so yeah. So with that said, uh, let's push on and let's get into full on spoilers about this. Let's fully break this down because really, after we go on and we create this Frankenstein monster, get to that dance number. Eventually, as Elizabeth's character was kind of in the play in the early stages of this film, and we kind of forget about her for a while. Eventually, by the end of this film, we realize that like okay, like we're gonna get more of this character, and we're gonna have her kind of in the mix with the monster, and eventually come to find where the characters where they start in this film are to transition and by the end of this movie kind of be in separate certain places than they were in the very beginning of this. You just kind of see these people grow and change within this entire film to cover a lot of ground here. So with that said, let's go on and let's get into full on spoilers. Let's get into break it down. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time you spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your either favorite Frankenstein movie or what is to be your favorite Mel Brooks film, because maybe you are to go on and like Blazing Saddles or High Anxiety, I believe is that title. Um, the one where Mel Brooks himself would be afraid of heights. Maybe you like Robin Hood, Men in Tights, or maybe you are to go on and like Spaceballs. That seems to be a movie that is going to get a sequel, and I should probably go on and review that at some point because that movie is actually pretty funny. Um, like the one like stormtrooper goons who have like the comb through the sand thing. That's pretty good. But also, I love me some John Candy, so that'll be a good movie to eventually at some point probably check out. Probably when this roughly around when the time I hear of sequel release, then I'm like, oh, I feel obligated to then need to look into the original to have a good bit of time. So, anyways, let's go into this movie. Let's spoil it all. Let's say it all in detail because it's about that time. Let's pause here. I'll get out my cast list, whatever I'm supposed to help me go on and get the nitty gritty details of certain cast people which I don't exactly know every single bit of every one of their names because there's an ensemble here, as well as also to have notes and things that are going to help me break down this movie for whatever I'm to go on and not have much of a memory of from the handful of times that I've seen this in the past. So, with that time said, let's pause here. Let's whip this out. All right, suppose everybody. So, in the very beginning of this, we have Falkenstein making his way through the Baron von Frankenstein's mansion, going on and opening up the coffin, finding this bit of box that seemingly barren as to behold, clutching into his skeleton like hands. Man, that skeleton has really decayed very quickly. Unless they've kind of just had this coffin just in this house, and who knows how long it's actually been there. But anyways, like, it's probably just for comedic effect here. So we have Falken or Folkstein that is to go on and try to be grasping at this box, and the skeleton won't let it go. So it's like, and then like the skeleton lets it go. So Falkenstein or Folkstein goes on to make his way into what is to be of Frankenstein's class, as it seems that he is going on and talking about the certain bit of systems that are to accumulate into the spinal cord. I don't want to go on every bit of every specifics of every little bit of thing here, but to state that they are to go on and talk about the spinal cord. And I think honestly, at some point, like, is legitimately Gene going on and saying every bit of these words that are to be attached to? I'm sure this guy has gone on to done quite a bit of actual legitimate, uh, like, doctrine of work, because I'm sure he can grab anybody. But yeah, but I'm just like, really, is all this like to not be something that doesn't seem to be something that he made up off the cuff? But anyways, I hope the science is probably there. But so anyways, we have a student getting up wanting to ask a question, and they go on to immediately call their teacher, uh, Dr. Frankenstein, and state that they have a question. And we have Frederick that turns to this student and says, "That's Frankenstein." I believe it's how it's said in the subtitles. So we go on and we have this student who's keeping continuously to figure out ways to try and talk about Frederick's grandfather's work and Victor Frankenstein. And consistently, when this is to be brought up, we go on to have Frankenstein here state about how his grandfather was a cuckoo, or how, in all actuality, like, also, like, his stuff was doo doo, cuckoo and doo doo and boo boo. So, and that he states that he has an accidental relationship uh, with this person who is to technically be his relative, but he is to kind of disown by not trying to carry on that name in a way. So, but if anything, we push on here to try and have, of course, Frederick is to try to go on and to try to teach a class and talk about the nervous impulses, the nerve impulses, involuntary and voluntary. So I think at some point I had even gone on in myself and probably learned about this at some point in some bit of schooling, as far as the nervous system and stuff like that. Probably in a number of health classes or something that probably just kind of stuck out to me to remember anything of that. Hence why I'm saying the words nervous systems and stuff along those natures. Because just of bizarrely just plucking out of prior brain knowledge of past. But anyways, uh, and also remembering, of course, some people would go on to not have, uh, or have the ability to not have a way to be able to feel if they are to be harmed. Like some people can go on and break their arms or legs or whatever and not even know that it happened. And like, yeah, and so like just mistakes happen and whatever. And yeah, like people have those conditions. But like the, yeah, anyways, moving on. So, but in this case, we go on and we have, of course, Frederick brings in Mr. Hilltop and brings him in here to go on and say, like, yeah, like, I am to go on and ask Mr. Hilltop to lift his knee, and he goes on and does so. And that, of course, because of uh, a nervous impulse because I had to go on and ask him, and his brain went from his body to make that motion happen. But then, of course, Frederick comes closer to than uh, than Mr. Hilltop and say like, well, yeah, like the first thing that was a voluntary response, but now here is an involuntary response. You son of a! And then he goes on, and he thrusts his knee almost into Hilltop's crotch, and Hilltop is gonna like and so Hilltop goes on and tries to brace himself for the inevitable knee to the groin, but it doesn't actually happen. And so Hilltop is like, oh my god, like I didn't know that was gonna occur. Of course he doesn't. So we have Frederick that is stated, it's like, okay, like the whole bracing uh for that impact to happen, that's an involuntary response. Like that is to just be like in my opinion, uh like the knee jerk reaction that is to kind of go quickly through your brain because you know uh like something is going to is something is coming, something's like that's when you probably go on and have like um that you can kind of see something in your peripheral and so on and so forth. Like there's a number of things that kind of go into your body that can really just have you be uh very much a person that like without you realizing it, like how you, like your body just reacts um in certain situations, which is kind of just fascinating to me. But I never really go on and have much of those kind of movies that are actually entertaining enough for people to actually want to actually go into and check out, as well as I would be fascinated by them. But like realistically, maybe there might be one of those kind of movies out there. It kind of breaks down some of the kind of like the science of your body working and the unusual natures of it. Like that's why I like watching some of the kind of like um the psychic or 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 psychic power like movies, because they can go on and probably try to scientifically explain how those things can occur at some points that could be possible. But anyways, so but we have Frederick after going on and doing that whole knee to the groin thing and having the guy brace. We then have Frederick state, it's like, well, hey, you know what? All you would need to go on and do is to just go on and block a certain part of the back of the brain that is to deal with your brain connecting to the rest of your body. And so we then have Frederick that is to put a blocker onto the back of this guy's head, and then goes on to the same nature of almost kneeing him into the groin by calling, "Yeah, you lousy son of a." And so we would go on to then have of course, the guy who is just staying just deadpan there because there's nothing he can do. And so after, of course, Frederick is to wait 5 or 6 seconds for this thing to just kind of kick into his blocking of his brain. So Frederick goes on and detach the thing that he had put in the back of this guy's brain, and then the guy just goes on to just kind of fall over, and the doctors grab him, and so Frederick is like, "Hey, give him an extra whole dollar, because yeah, that's a sign of the times. But if anything, yeah, like give him a whole extra dollar, for his troubles, because of course, like the guy didn't realize what they were actually doing to him, because of course they couldn't. So, and plus also, it seemed that Hilltop was to go on and kind of writhe in pain, after, of course, he was to go on and leave here. So but again, like we come back to this same student that is to uh again start to be making his way to talk to uh Frederick about the whole like uh worm and spaghetti thing, and goes on to make his way back to uh reanimating dead tissue, and again, like Frederick knows where this is going. It's like, well, yeah, like my father was a very sick man, and so, but this student is like, well, hey, like, why aren't you just curious about your father's work? And Frederick just flies off the handle. It's like, dead is dead. Like, my grandfather's work was doo doo, and yeah, so because this student brings up the whole like organ transplant thing of like kidneys and lungs and such. But yeah, but it's like, but you can't resurrect the central nerve system, and there's just a number of other just kind of uh, pitfalls that are to go on and kind of um, that you have to go on and rationally figure out. And so by the end of this whole discussion, we end up accidentally having Frederick, who is this age, is like, I can do more with this scalpel than I can go on to do with reanimating a dead corpse. And so, uh, and so Frederick stabs himself with a scalpel in the leg, and then he has to go on and kind of pull it back out. And here's where he is to have to tell the class is dismissed, and then Folkstein goes on to tell uh, Frankenstein who his name is, and that he is to be, of course, to give Frankenstein his grandfather's will because he has traveled 5,000 miles to do so. So the next thing we go on and see is now Elizabeth and both Frederick here. They're to go on and do that kind of very classic like husband and wife are at the train, and they're going on and they're saying their goodbyes. Like I've seen this kind of scene in so many films at some point, but I always find it at some ways just like so entertaining. Um, like there is the one, God, what is it? The on Moonlight Bay, where the blonde and the soldier guy, like he has to go on the train, and like they make an interesting bit out about all of that, and and that like scenes like this kind of reminds me of so many other classic films, as well as also so many other um like ties in of trains at some point, where like that's how they kind of try to end the movie, or that's where they try to transition some of the characters. But anyways, I'm getting too into the tangents and weeds here. I apologize. But anyways, so the funny thing about both Elizabeth and both Frederick here, as we further and further find out how very fragile that Elizabeth is completely here, where we of course go on to have Frederick who's to try and kiss Elizabeth, and so Elizabeth is like, "Oh no, you can't kiss me because I just put lipstick on," and Frederick is like, "Oh, okay, all right, so we can't kiss, but could I at least like hug you?" And then like when he tries to hug her, it's like, "Oh no, like you can't hug me because it'll ruin um my coat, my God, what is it called? Uh the uh the defeta." And so we even go on to have where like Frederick tries to grasp even Elizabeth's hand, and she's like, "Oh, my nails!" And so it's like, God. So like I could probably very much understand that this could also make a lot of sense for how like fragile a lot of like the and I don't want to sound like very like uh I know this is probably gonna how this is gonna sound, but like for how probably in the time period how a lot of things were just so fragilely made, as well as also going on to like be how probably women want things to go on and probably be just so and but like that'll go on and just make me just sound like a horrible person. So like um but also I'm just thinking just like the fragile natures of stuff that are probably during a time period of like, oh, you can't go on and do the slightest thing, or you'll go on and you'll just like break things so easily because of how uh crappy they were made at a certain time period. That's what I was trying to get at. Other than anything else that I'm sure any number of people are probably like, "Oh, you mean this?" Whatever. But anyways, so but it was funny, like the both of them just kind of elbow together, like as if this is COVID. And so Frederick gets onto the train and he blows a kiss as he's gone on to hear it numerous times by the guy calling for everybody all aboard. So Frederick goes on and blows a kiss, and Elizabeth even dodges the blowing of the kiss, but then she then goes on and blows kisses at Frederick. So we have Frederick who's on this train, and there's a funny bit here that I actually really do like, where there's this couple in the background, and they're talking about like Harry, he was at it again. So what do you want me to do about it? Like every day he's doing this, and every day, and so like the guy of the situation is like, well, let him. And so we have this conductor that kind of comes out here and he's like, all right, like, New York's next. Everybody out for New York. And so the next thing we end up seeing is like Frederick in a completely different train, and they're talking, I believe, skittish or something. People can correct me in the comments below. I'm sure it's any number of languages. I'm sure will probably be like, yeah, this is actually this. Oh, okay. So the two of them are going on and they're saying the exact same bit of dialogue here, but in different language. Where it's like, Harry, he was at it again. Uh, so what do you want me to do about it? Every day with this. And it's like, let him. And so it's like, is this a jerkin joke? Come on, is some beef jerkin joke going on here? Let me know in the comments below. So as Frederick has defined that it seems that this is to be the way to Transylvania. Frederick pokes his head out the window as to ask this boy if this is to be the Transylvania station, where of course the boy is to state, well, yeah, yeah, like track 29. Would you like me to shine your shoes? And Frederick is going to like, no thanks. So we have Frederick that is go on and just be waiting at the station for eventually someone to go on and seemingly pick him up here, who ends up being Igor. As the two of them meet, we of course have Igor who says, Frederick, Frankenstein's name is Frankenstein, and he's no, it's pronounced Frankenstein. And so then Igor is like, well, is your first name Froderick then? And Frankenstein is like, no, like it's not. But throughout the whole rest of the movie, Igor consistently keeps calling him Froderick, and it's funny. As well as also, instead of having Igor's name be Igor, he's like, oh no, my name is Igor. So, but if anything, after all the pleasantries and the fact of the matter of them like stating how they're to go on and be kind of relatives of people that they're now going to have to both need to work alongside of now that they've kind of been grandfathered into this situation. We go on to, of course, have uh, Igor giving this stairwell a bit of canery, and then he goes on to tell Froderick that he needs to go on and walk just like this. So bizarrely, like Frederick goes on and grabs the cane and walks exactly like how Igor had gone to do, and he's like, God, like why am I doing this? And then he's like, okay, it's all for a laugh. Still a good laugh, I feel. Oh, we also had where Igor is to have like the hump, and so Frederick mentions how he's a really good surgeon. And he's like, well, hey, I can get that hump removed, and he's like, well, what hump? And he's like, but it's also interesting how Igor eventually has his hump just kind of move from one place to the other. If you go on and if you watch like Robin Hood Men in Tights, you go on and realize that like that kind of gag where the hump moves in different places, like that ends up kind of being like a Mel Brooks staple. Like we'll come to find in Robin Hood Men in Tights, where like I think the guy with the crown, the guy who I believe is I don't remember the actor's name, but he ends up having a mole, and his mole ends up getting like moved all over the place within the entire film. Like his every time you see him, like the mole is in a different place within his entire face somewhere, and like that is to go on and just be like, it wasn't like so. Like that is to be kind of like the running gag of the entire film of his just mole consistently moving, and it's the funny bit within the film. But anyways, so we have Igor that is like, okay, hey, Frederick, come on with me. He has this horse and carriage, and in the back of it, there is to be uh, this huge thing of hay, uh, that it seems is to go on and not just have hay within it, it's to also have Inga. As Frederick goes on and is to chuck this briefcase into this hay, not thinking anyone else is to be within uh, this bit of this hay there besides just Frederick. We come to find Inga, who is rolling in the hay. Roll, roll, roll in the hay. And so Inga immediately were just like, God dang, like woo, woof, if anything. But yeah, but like Inga, of course, to be this just very much femme fatale that we are to go on and just have some really good banter between her and Frederick throughout this movie. Some innuendos that are to be just kind of for the adults to laugh about, and then the kids to probably figure out later what it all means. Or the kids are pretty smart; they'll probably figure them out anyways. Because I'm to go on and probably state that it probably at this certain point that I probably feel that there's a generational gap now between me and other people. And hey, like I'm sure the kids are pretty knowledgeable of whatever at this point. You can't get it past any of them, the Gen Zers or whoever's. Uh, God, I had to really just state how exactly old I am. But anyways, doesn't matter. Like however old you are, if you're this many, like it's okay. We can all enjoy a movie like this, and it doesn't matter how freaking old you are. But anyways, I am gonna get canceled by everyone in this in this review. I think I made it a freaking just objective to like. I'm probably just gonna get canceled by everyone now. Now that I've tried so much so to try to save this channel, I'm probably gonna get canceled by everyone. I'm sorry. Uh, moving on. So, uh, we consistently have lightning throughout this entire movie, as if lightning happens all the goddamn time. So, as both Frederick and Inga are both into this almost hay bale ride, they go on, they notice the lightning, and they are to be afraid of its discharge. And they also are to go on and hear a howling, and they oddly go on to make the first assumption to assume that it's a werewolf. And I'm like, okay, I guess you really just want to go on and just have like some supernatural ties within this film. Like Transylvania, like reminds us of vampires. Now we have werewolves that are to go on. Yeah, like that is to be, of course, another supernatural staple. And so they say, werewolf, werewolf, and so Igor is like their wolf, their castle, and so we have Frederick that has turned to Igor. It's like, why are you starting to talk like that? And Igor is like, well, like I thought that's how you guys were talking, so I thought I would uh, be easy and just do the same. And so it's like, no, we're not talking that way. Oh, okay, all right. So we have Igor that points to realize, like, well, hey, well, that's home. So we have the horse and buggy that goes on to finally make their way to the castle. As Igor makes the to the door, he bangs on these big, huge, massive knockers, as well as also Frederick is to be a faceful of Inga and her knockers, and like nice knockers or what knockers, and Inga is to be stating to Frederick, it's like, oh well, thank you for the compliment. He's like, ah. Frederick, I don't feel has ever really much gone on and stated throughout this movie that he is to seemingly have a fiance or be much engaged. Uh, Up until the point where then his Elizabeth does go on and meet, and then all of a sudden it seems that oh yeah, I am to realize that this is my fiance, and it seems that Frederick is to have all forgotten that it's that Elizabeth is to even exist until the story is to go on and need him to know or remember. Because, in all honesty, like, you kind of get these characters that are to once within these scenarios, like, forget about the whole outside world until it comes to them. Like, within the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein movie, Frankenstein completely forgets about his uh like planning of him and his wife. I want to say wife because eventually what really is to be transpiring in that movie is very weird. But like uh his future wife, let's just say, um that they're making plans to eventually be married and everything like that. And then Victor goes into this school and gets completely consumed by the school, and then the school leads to him to going on to trying to figure out this creature, this monster, this thing for him to go on and resurrect the dead, because this Victor Frankenstein is to be so trying to avoid death ever happening. So he goes on to try uh and resurrect the dead. So immortality would technically be an existing thing. But anyways, but if anything, with the hodgepodging of stuff that they just slammed together all in that film, like yeah, immortality that would be just quite a little bit of a difficult task to really process altogether. But anyways, of how it exactly, like, okay, well, you can put a person's brain into that, but it won't be the same brain of, yeah, like, so anyways, because it'll be a completely different person. Moving on. So here is where the knocking of the doors to go on and mean something, as we have Frau Brucher making her way into this movie. And consistently, when they go on and state her name, we have the horses go wild, as we consistently have the people looking out to wherever the horse sound is coming from, because they are to be frightened by it. And when it consistently keeps happening, every single time, everybody's like, "Bleh!" Like, and then even off in the distance when she goes on to state her name and the horses are still freaking out, it's still funny. So we have, of course, Frau Brucher, as she is to go on and introduce herself as I am Frau Brucher, and everyone is to look at the horses. And so we, of course, have Frankenstein that introduces himself here, and Inga is to be, of course, the assistant, and then of course Frankenstein ends up restating the name of, like, well, I present Frau Brucher again. Of course, freaking out. So uh, Frau Brucher is to state here that that the doctor's room is to be prepared, and all he has to do is follow her. So we have Igor that is to be told by Frederick to, like, hey, get our bags, please. And then we, of course, go on uh, and have Frankenstein turn to Flabrucher and say after you. So, and then Igor, after getting all the luggage, he ends up saying Brucher, and then yeah. If anyways, I'm kind of really drilling that joke home. So Frau, certain name of unknown for this. I've said it too much now. It's not good anymore. It's not funny anymore. So Frau is to go on and state to Igor, Inga, and Frederick to follow her. And when they make their way up the stairs, Frau is to state for them to stay ever so close to the candles that are not lit whatsoever, because the stairs could be very dangerous if they don't. I love this because, in my opinion, I'm like, the candles aren't lit, but it's the whole joke of it all that, like, you're just to stick by the candles because they'll keep you safe. And as well as also, like, the rest of the house is lit with candles, but that one place is just not. So it's just kind of funny. So we go on to see a picture of what is to seemingly be uh, Victor. Um, who is to go on and be seemingly Frederick's grandfather. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So, who is Baron von Frankenstein? Maybe that was Victor? That has to be. And maybe Victor was to go on and be like his nickname, I'm assuming, or assessing. Right? No? Let me know in the comments below. For those of you that are in the know about Frankenstein things, like, in my opinion, uh, yeah, any of the other movies, they would go on to. I've seen other Frankenstein things. They call him Victor, so they have a whole movie called Victor Frankenstein. So, if anything, um, maybe Baron is to go on. I don't know. Maybe Last Descending Frankenstein, person beyond Victor. Anyways, I would have to go on and definitely see the black and white, the orig, the OG. So we of course have Frederick realize that, like, well, hey, like, Victor does go on and have a library, but a lot of these books are so very generic that he's like, well, hey, where is my grandfather's private library? I'm sure there is one because these books are just not enough for me to go on and really get a taste of my heritage. It seems as I would go on and stay here. That's not exactly what he says. Anyways, moving on. So, but if anything, it seems that the private library will be something that Frederick will have to go on to discover later on in this movie. So logically, uh, as Frau is to go on her and say that this is the only library that she knows of, which is actually a lie. So we of course go on and consistently here have Frau that is consistently asking uh, Frederick if he wants something, if he wants some warm milk, if he wants some da, 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 some Ovaltine, and I was trying to think of the word, and like anything that would go on and consistently just have Frau just kind of stretch this out a little bit more and more, and Frederick just gets to the point where it's like nothing, like, I want nothing, like I'm nothing. Thank you. I'm a little tired. So they, as much as possible, it's like, good night, good night. Come on, let's go, let's go. Like, I really want to go on and go to bed. So as Frederick is to go on and adjust a bit of his room, he's to go on and look at some mirrored reflection of Frau trying to go on and do some lip lock-ins with seemingly Victor's picture, having us come to find in the later part of the movie that Frederick had a girlfriend who ends up getting revealed as Frau. Frau and Victor had a little something something. So here's where we go into the no, no, no. I'm not Frankenstein. I'm not Frankenstein. I'm Frankenstein. Don't give me that. I can't believe in fate, and I won't say it. All right, you win. You win, I give. I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll say it. Destiny. Destiny. No escaping. That's from me. Destiny. Destiny. No escape. That's from me. And so Frankenstein is to go on and get awakened by Inga. And so, Dr. Frankenstein, wake up! What is it, Inga? You're having a nightmare. It sounded like the way that she pronounced nightmare, it just sounded weird. Uh, but if anything, we'll just roll with it here. So, the reasoning that possibly Frankenstein was to go on and have this nightmare was simply because of the background of this music and really wanting to go on and figure out where it's coming from. And they realize that it's coming from behind a bookcase, which leads to another good scene here. So the two of them make their way to this bookcase as they're like, well, yeah, it's definitely coming from this bookcase. So Frankenstein goes on to think that there's a possibility that there's some secret uh, thing that they need to unlock here. And so he just kind of pulls this random book and nothing happens. And so he's like, aha, like, so it must be something else. So the more and more that they start to look around here, we get to a point where then Inga is to take this candle, and that is the trigger. That is the thing that ends up swinging the bookcase, and then the bookcase is to be flipped to where we just kind of see this wooden wall here. And so Frankenstein is crying out to Inga, put the candle back. And so she does. And then he's like, okay, what was that? And so Frederick makes the plan here with Inga, like, well, hey, how about you go on and how about you just kind of toggle the candle and I'll go on and I'll brace this thing with my body and he'll end up getting completely creamed and smushed here. And so Inga goes on and does the thing with the candle, and then Frederick is going like, well, hey, like put the candle back. And so uh Inga goes on and says, well, hey, how about I go on and how about I just push my body against this one side of, and maybe that'll just go on and uh and just fix our problems here. And so Inga goes on, she tries to like brace herself, she tries to do a little shoulder bump here, and she ends up on the other side of the thing, and now Frederick seems to be completely fine, and then she goes on Inga to be like, put the candle back. So Frederick finally goes on to figure out a way to have this thing go halfway in, halfway out open. And so it's like, okay, let's make our way through here. So they continue to make their way further and further down into this seemingly endless, almost staircase of a thing. And is to go on and at some point see a rat and they freak out about it because of course I guess you have to freak out about rats in films because you always have to. So we have at a point where both Inga and Frederick make their way seemingly finally by the end of this endless staircase. There's an end, I guess, at some point. We have to go on and we have to finish this film. So they make their way to this door where when immediately they grab onto the handle and the handle completely breaks. Great. So they figure out a way to still open the door, which leads to them finding a bunch of heads. 3 years dead, 2 years dead, 6 months dead, and then I ain't got nobody, but nobody has got me. From Igor. Classic joke here, and really just, if you've never seen this movie, greatest part about this film. I like me and my family always have a really good laugh at this part. It's always funny. It's always really good. So we go on to have Frederick and Inga, who's like, well, hey, like, how did you get down here? And so Igor is to go on to find a dumbwaiter, which is just to be like this small, like makeshift elevator looking thing, and then you just make your way down into certain parts of the house or home or whatever you're in, because house is a home. You know what I mean? Anyways, but if anything, also Igor was attracted by the music as well. That was to seemingly have him go from the kitchen to now right where he was here. So we go on and have them assess that there might be a person that may be going on and being at some point at this castle. And so, considering Igor's here, and Inga's here, and Frederick's here, there's only one person left. And I'm sure a little bit of certain horses would go on and probably realistically uh, that out of who would it possibly going to be. So uh, we have had to assess here that this place that these three may go into may be dangerous, unexpected of who they're to go on and find or see within this dangerous room they're going into. So Igor is like, okay, how about you guys go on first as I go on behind you? So as they make their way through this door, Frederick is to go on and be like, hey, is there any lights in this place? And Igor is to mention like, well, hey, there's some toggles off to the side here. You can go on and touch them yourself because I'm not going to be the first guy that touches them. So Frederick goes on and touches one of the toggles, immediately gets a shock, and he's like, "Damn your eyes!" And then he goes on to hit another toggle that lights up the room. There is a huge, massive science lab that seemed to be webbed up in cobwebs all over the goddamn place. And so they further then make their way into another room next to the science room, and that is to, of course, be uh, Frederick's grandfather's library. So they go on to find within this library that it seems that the violin was seemingly warm. And I don't know why they had to go on and touch the violin and notice that the violin was warm. That just seemed very weird. Uh, I like. I think that's just kind of weird. Like when you would go on to touch things, and like I'm sure anything in that room would be warm because it's room temperature. But anyways, so like would the body heat of a certain person going, I don't know, I'm just like so confused about that statement. I guess it's probably to just be a joke to probably somebody, but anyways, it's probably to play into my stupidity. So there also is to see within an ashtray that someone had had a cigarette as well. So here is where we go on to end up having Frederick Find How I Did It by Victor Frankenstein. He's like, oh my god, I found my father's book. And so he goes on, picks it up, starts to read it, until the midst of darkness, a sudden light broke in upon me, a light so brilliant and wondrous, and yet so simple. Changed the poles from plus to minus and minus to plus. Alone uh, succeeded in discovering the secret of bestowing life. Nay, even more, I myself became capable of bestowing animation upon lifeless matter. And so that is when Frederick is like, oh my god, it could work. So we then have Victor's face within the painting because all of a sudden he's smiling now. Because we have again where the painting adjusts throughout the entire film. So Frederick and Inca are going on and they're having a meal here, and they're going on through the book and trying to figure out how exactly a reanimated corpse would go on and look within the way that Victor is to go on and describe it to be that they need a really enormous person, and when then going on and saying like, well, yeah, they need an enormous person. Man, that guy is gonna have a huge uh, Schwann sphincter or whatever, and or yeah, he's gonna have enormous Schwanstuck or Schwanstuck. And so it's like, well, that goes without saying. And so Igor is like, yeah, he's going to be really popular. Like, woof, yeah. So, and that this guy is going to have to be 7 feet in height and so on and so forth. And so as they go on and they assess the size of this person, and Igor is like, well, hey, like, is the person that you're going to look for, is it going to be someone like this, as he draws what Frankenstein is going to look similar to like, and then he plops it onto uh, this thing for the two of them to go on and see, and they're like, all right, like, uh, this might be our man. And so the next thing we see is a person who had gone on to be hung. In the other Frankenstein story that I'd gone on to see, like, we'd obviously had the person that they picked out originally was to seemingly be a murderer that had gone on to kill a doctor in another story. And then they had hung that person. And then when hanging that person, uh, Frederick, Victor Frankenstein is to know of this dead person, and then goes on to collect their body and then put a different brain in theirs, which is to actually be a legitimate, um, smarter brain instead of the Abby normal like in this movie, or the gorilla brain. But then also, it is to be a brain of a well renowned doctor that it seemed had gone on to previously uh, have worked on the Frankenstein esh like knowledge of this experiment and what have you. Which eventually, when Victor does go on and reanimate the corpse and have this Frankenstein monster run amok, yeah, the brain doesn't just remember who he all is, and is to just remember uh, being that guy. It doesn't happen that way. Anyways, but moving on here. So the people had gone on to take that hung man and bury him. And so after the guys leave for the night, both Igor and both Frederick go on to re-dig this guy up, and then go on to get his coffin and haul him out onto this carriage for them to get him to their castle. Coincidentally, as they go on to try and move this coffin around, they accidentally have the coffin fall out of the horse and carriage or whatever, and the coffin breaks, and then they have to try to figure out how to lift it, and like the hand ends up coming out of the coffin, and so now there ends up getting this officer who comes into fray here, who I believe actually does have a actual name. I believe is a constable, and we consistently have the gag where Frederick has to pretend that the hand that is to be of the dead person is to actually go on and be his own, as he drapes his cape over the hand, just like, oh yeah, this is my hand now, even though it's actually the corpse. And at some points we have Frederick that kind of stomps his feet and and then Igor kind of adjusts the hand so that way it can just kind of go on and do what it needs to do here. So we have a point where the hand goes on and shakes the hand of the constable. But it's like, oh yeah, like you're new in town. Like, oh yeah, like I heard something about you and so on and so forth. And so yeah, so throughout this thing, we consistently have where Frederick goes on and keeps just kind of picking at his hand or just going on and kind of grasping his hand. And we have at one point where when the constable and Frederick shake hands here, the constable's like, "Man, your hand is ice cold." He's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. All right." So, uh, and the constables go on and tell Frederick, it's like, "Yeah, like it must be a very cold, chilly night. Like all you need to go on and go home and do is just grasp by the warm fire and so on and so forth." So by the end of it, we also have the hand that goes on to kind of tip uh, Frederick's hat as the two of them say goodbye to one another. So they bring the corpse to the table and have all these kind of metal straps that are onto the side here. And so we now have to go on and we have to get the brain. And so Frederick turns to Igor like, hey, you know the brain of the name of which that you're to go on and get the brain of? And it's to be going on to be like a well-renowned brain of sorts. So yeah, Igor goes on and has like the H Delbrook on his hand, and it goes on to make his way to the brain depository. So Igor goes on to make his way into finding Hans Delbrook, uh, scientist and saint. And so Igor's like, like this is the thing that I need to grab. And as Igor is to go on and grab the brain that is to be held within this jar, all of a sudden the lightning strikes and he completely drops the jar, and the brain turns into mush onto the ground and falls into pieces. So Igor grabs the next thing that he sees, which is the abnormal brain, where he goes on and says that it's Abby something, Abby normal. So and right on the thing it says, "Do not use this brain. Abnormal." What are they going to use this brain for? Also, why do they have the brains all stacked up like that? Like, do they just have leftover brains? Well, I guess if it's technically a medical thing, maybe they just have certain brains that are kind of donated to science to just kind of see if they can go on and do something with them. But then again, like we don't have the actual high tech of technology probably during uh, this way of filming and whatever, but have you. So what could they do with a brain? Maybe experiment on it in some kind of means. So they go on, and we have to assume, like, put the brain into the guy's head, and so Inga's like, he's hideous, and Frederick like, he's beautiful, and he's mine. So we have Igor who is consistently going on and flying kites, and because he wants to go on and drag into the electricity, you would think that probably lightning rods or whatever, but I guess that was probably a present thing to go on and have to exist to attract lightning. So Frederick is to go on and try to hurry people up because they're fighting time and elements here. Because how often is it going to be that lightning is going to strike or strike twice? So Igor and Frederick are to kind of have a bit of discussion here of whether or not that the experiment is to go the way that um, their previous predecessors had gone on to have it possibly occur. And Frederick is to state that he is going to the letter of what they are to go on and have this experiment go on to be. So we also have Frederick that is to tell to Igor, like, hey man, you should get down here because at some point, like, there's gonna possibility of electrocution if you don't. And Igor is like, what? And then as soon as Frederick repeats that statement, Igor is right alongside him, and he's like, how did you get here so quickly? So uh so they go on and they turn on the generator, and start to go on and have people wait at the main wheels and certain things here. So we have Frederick that is to go on and state about Hans Dolbrich's brain being a part of this body, and imagine what could happen. This is the moment. And so we have Frederick that turns to Inga here, and is to go on and ask her, it's like, well, will you elevate me? And Inga's like, elevate you? Like, now? Here? And Frederick's like, yes, yes, like, raise the platform. And she's like, oh, the platform elevate you. Oh, and I'm sure she probably said elevate. She probably didn't know exactly what elevate meant. Maybe he like they had to confirm that he said the word elevate even. Like you. Anyways, uh, maybe there's some kind of weird innuendo joke here to come out of this. So Inga goes on and grabs the wheel and is to bring Frederick and Monster into elevation. So we have Frederick here that is going on and stating our greatest dread has always been the knowledge of our own mortality. But tonight we shall hurl the gauntlet of science into the frightful face of death itself. Tonight we shall ascend to the heavens. We shall mock the earthquake. We shall command the thunders and penetrate into the very womb of impervious nature itself. Pervious? Anyways, so Frederick goes on and has Igor flip the switches, and eventually, then Frederick is to have Igor flip the third switch, and Igor's not the third switch, and he's like, "Do what I ask you, damn you!" And so Igor goes on and thrusts the third switch, and he almost gets electrocuted. And that is, of course, why you don't toggle the third switch. So we go on to have Frederick, who is yelling, "Life, life, do you hear me, life?" It seems that the monster is seemingly almost glowing for how much electricity is possibly coursing through its body. And so they get to a point where they realize to turn everything off and bring him down. And so Frederick is to make his way back down with the monster still on the table. And so Frederick is to try to find the heartbeat of the monster and is to go on and just be smacking the heart, hoping to bring this monster back or to seemingly life. And he realizes he has to give up. He's like, all right, well, like, let's all just try and stay of good cheer. And if science teaches us anything, it teaches us to accept our failures as well as our successes with quiet dignity and grace. And so As Inga and Igor turn, Frederick thrusts into the monster, choking him. It's like, what did you do to me? And so they're trying to get Frederick away from the monster as he chokes him. And he's like, I don't want to live, I don't want to live. And Igor turns to the camera. It's like, yeah, only dignity and grace. Yeah. Quiet dignity and grace. So, and then Frederick screams, Mama, as we then turn to the townfolk. The townfolk is to, of course, go on and they're to make statements about, like, well, hey, Frankenstein has made his way back into town, and they naturally assume that he is going to go on and he is going to uh, continue his grandfather's work because he's a Frankenstein, and that they're all alike. We go on and have a guy that is kind of rousing the town, as well as um, these men with these very specific, unusual hats are going on and kind of counseling, being the heads of this council of town folk here. So the further that this goes further on to rile up the people within this town's meeting, the more they are to go on and, like, well, hey, like, if anything, like, if anyone can go on and get uh like down to uh the investigation of all this, it has to go on and be Inspector Kemp. So Inspector comes on in, and we go on to, of course, have him be lighting uh his cigarette here. And so what he goes on and he tries to do here is he finds this furnace and he puts his hand into the furnace, and then he lights it because this guy has a wooden hand. And so he lights the cigar, and he realizes, like, oh, like, I should probably put this out. So he finds this drink, and so he uh tries to put it out there, and, like, yeah, so kind of jokingly, like, some laughing or hilarious ensue here. So we, of course, go on to have Inspector Kemp here to state that a riot is an ugly, or I should probably say it in his accent. A riot is an ugly thing. That wasn't good. Uh, and once you get started, there is little chance to stop it. Uh, Short of bloodshed, I think before we go around killing people, we better make damn sure of our evidence. We had better confirm the fact that young Frankenstein is indeed following in his father's footsteps. Huh? Following in his father's footsteps. Footsteps. Ah, footsteps. And he clackles and moves his feet around. And so the inspector goes on and, like, I think what is in order is for me to pay a little visit on the good doctor. Un to have a nice quiet chat. So we, of course, go on and go back to the doctor, who's like, reputation, reputation. Oh, doctor, you mustn't do this to yourself. And we, of course, have the doctor who's like, well, I can't think of anything else. So they go on and they look at the doctor. It's like, well, you haven't touched your food. And they start slapping the food on the plate. It's like, there, I touched it. You happy? Uh, and so we have Igor that goes on to relate, and this is a really good joke, where Igor's state, like, I never forget my old dad, when things used to happen to him like this, the things he used to say. And Frederick is like, "Oh, what did he say? What the hell are you doing in that uh, bathroom day and night? Why don't you get out of there and give someone else a chance?" Oh, maybe it's better this way, as Frederick is stayed. The poor lifeless Hulk. Maybe it's better off dead. So we then cue to the monster, and he's flipping his fingers, making us realize he's alive. So they make their way through the desert, and all of a sudden there's a going on, and Frederick is like, "Oh, Igor, you like the dessert?" And Igor is like, "No, like that wasn't me doing any kind of yumming sound." And so Frederick turns to Inga. It's like, "Well, I didn't make the sound." And he's like, "Well, if I didn't make it, you didn't. Like, who else would have gone on?" So they scramble to make their way down to the monster, realizing that he's alive. He's alive. It's alive. So we have Frankenstein that goes on to say to the monster, "Hello there. I'm going to set you free. Is the sedative ready?" "Yes, doctor." So the doctor goes on and frees the monster to have him sit up and then have him stand on his feet. And the monster kind of buckles. Frankenstein tries to grab him to try to steady him here, realizing, like, hey, you can stand up, you can do all this. And so trying to force the monster to walk as Frankenstein is to grab him by the hands, and then they walk together. So Inga is to say that she's quite frightened, but if anything, Frankenstein says to not worry here. So we go on and we have oddly a poor choice for Igor to take a time to light a cigarette because this was so stupid. I didn't get this at all. We have this character that doesn't have a whole entire cigarette at any point in this entire film, but all of a sudden he starts to decide to light up. Now, he lights up, the fire ends up appearing, the monster freaks out about fire. Like, they could have done this in a better way. They could have had either Igor or Inga, like, have a candle in their hand, and that would have made a lot more sense. We could have had at one point, like them holding a candle and then realize that maybe candle wax burned their hand, and then they drop the candlestick, and then that triggers the reaction of the Frankenstein monster freaking out. Moving on. So the monster starts freaking out here, grabbing on to Frederick's neck from behind him. So we go on to have Frederick, who's desperately going on and saying, "Set it, set it," and they're like, "What?" And so he ends up doing charades, and so they go on and like, okay, like uh, three syllables. One, said, yeah, that's the first word, and then the second word uh is to be and then it's like, okay, what's the third word? What's the third word? And so he goes on and he's like presenting something to them. So they're like, set a give. So and I thought it was kind of funny because Igor was saying like, oh, he said a dirty word, he said a dirty word. So uh so yeah, so they were thinking that the clue to was sedative, and then they're like, oh wait, sedative. So they figure out that it's sedative, so or sedative, and so they inject into the monster. He passes out as Frankenstein grabs him and kind of cradles him into the fall. So Frankenstein turns to the group. It's like, sedative. So they ask him if he's all right. The doctor, and he says yes. And so we go on to have Frederick, who's like, I need a word with you, Igor. Like, what brain did you put into this thing? And so, as Igor is to want to seemingly sit on the ground and then sit on the stool. So, Igor goes on to explain that it's like, well, it definitely wasn't the brain uh, that of course Frankenstein wanted, but it was to go on and be a brain that had the name Abby, Abby something, Abby normal. And so we then have Frederick that is going to realize that within this monster is to be a gorilla brain, and so Frederick grabs Igor, starts choking him, lifting him up way in the air, and so we of course have Igor that is turning to Inga here, and it's like three syllables. First word, said, said. No. So what stops Frederick here is a bang at the door with a wooden arm, which is be Inspector Kemp here. So they scramble. Frederick is telling Inga to get the door. Frederick tells Igor to strap uh, that monster down tightly, and Frederick is going on to tell everyone that they have to look normal, even though his tux is flying out of the bow and tie and whatever and what have you, and it looked kind of hilarious. So the next thing we see is both Frankenstein and Kemp doing a bit of darts. It seems that Frankenstein is really good at darts. He's almost bullseyeing most of the game here. So Camp is to tell Frederick here, well, like, well, excellent shots. So Camp is a little concerned that the good doctor is to seemingly be playing around in monsters, whereas Frederick is to try to make it clear to Camp that it's like, oh, hey, like monsters, isn't that passe? Like ghosts and goblins and such, like and Kemp is like, well, not to be anything of the good people of this village that are to probably say otherwise. And so to them it's very real. So because of course the councilmen that are who have been putting together that whole questioning of whether Frankenstein is to be following in his footsteps, they had gone on to mention that they had been in the debacle of the Frankenstein um, uh, debacle of reanimated corpses in the past. So maybe we can go on and seemingly discover a story that is to be beyond just Victor Frankenstein and what have you, and whoever else is to be people have created or resurrected, whatever. So as Frederick is to go on and be distracted here, we have Kemp who is to shuffle off and put his darts right in the bullseyes to where he looks like he's cheating here. And then he makes this sound like he shot all these things. And Frederick looks back, he's like, as he spits out his drink, he's like, wow, like, nice grouping. So Frederick is to go on and be like, well, I wouldn't think an intelligent fellow like yourself would fall for such suspicious rot. It is not. Oh no. So uh, Camp is to go on and say it's like, well, like I'm not. It is not superstitious that worries me, Doctor. Uh, but Jean's own chromosomes. So it may be rubbish, but if anything, that I guess is Transylvania for you. And them dealing with a whole kinds of goblins and goose and what in Transylvania. Yeah, Draculas and werewolves and everything. They got to deal with all that. So as we have Frankenstein that is consistently getting up to throw his darts here, we have camp that is going on and figuring out ways to stall Frederick from doing so, saying about how he's a Frankenstein, and then like, and so we consistently have Frederick who's throwing the darts, and he's throwing them all over the place. He's breaking this window. He's throwing it behind him, and so Frederick is to throw all of these darts, and so Frederick is to want to go on and say like, well, you know what, this is fun, but I'm a little tired, Inspector. So like, I think we should go on and call it a night. So the inspector, right as he goes on to leave, we of course have Camp that is going to say, like, well, I may give the villagers your complete assurance that you have no interest whatsoever in carrying on your father's work. And as Frederick doesn't seem quite to answer this, all of a sudden there's a in the background where Kemp is to turn to Frederick of like, well, I'll take that as a yes. And so we have Frederick is like, and then so it's like, well, very well then. So Kemp goes on and leaves here. As he goes on and has his hand, and then his hand, he tries to like adjust back, but it gets stuck there. So he just starts to walk off here. So Kemp goes on and makes his way back to his car, that seems to be filled with darts in it from the dart game. So flat tires, it seems. So Frau Bruher is making her way to the monster. She goes on to realize that the experiment has gone on to work, that she is going to set the monster free, and so she goes on to unlatch the tines of the monster to let him free, and Frederick, Inga, Igor come in to try and stop her. And so Frau Brucher is to let the monster free because she is to realize a way to persuade this monster that has gone on to persuade a number of the Frankenstein family with the music. She is to go on and play the violin. And so as she goes on to then play it, Frederick is to go on and then realize all of the things that had been occurring before, which is to be like she was the one who was playing the music before, and she was to go on and be somehow linked uh, to Frederick's father. It's like yes, uh, it's the reveal of Frau Brucher being Victor's girlfriend, and so on and so forth. Funny enough, the Frankenstein monster never ends up with Frau Brucher, so like oddly enough, like we just have Frau Brucher here being the odd person out here. I don't know why. It seemed like that would have probably been the easiest connection. But I guess maybe Victor and Frau Brucher will have this kind of when she dies, they'll reconnect again. Sadly enough. So uh, we accidentally have the monster that goes on, and he gets far too close to one of the laboratory's uh, bit of devices here that is to go on and spark a fire. And so again, monster gets scared by fire. He runs away here, and we of course have Frau Bruher that says he's free. Do you hear me? Free. And so the monster is to go on and is to make his way outside the castle. Lightning clashes. He ends up getting afraid. So Frederick is to go. I'm trying to speed this up as much as I can here, realizing this is going to take forever, and we haven't even gotten to the dance number yet. So we have Frederick, who is to be at a point where he is to be like, "What have I done? What have I done? Oh God in heaven!" So we now have the girl who seemingly is nearby the well, who's consistently going on and taking these flower petals and chucking them into this well. So saying, "Oh, I love my pretty little flower. Oh, I love my flower." So we have the family of the little girl who is going on and nailing every wooden board they can to their house, and they're stating because of this monster be running amok upon the town that they're kind of taking precautions here. And so the two of them go on to ask one another where exactly is Helga, I believe, their kid, and they end up asking one another. It's like, well, yeah, it's Helga, and they start figuring like, well, hey, I thought you were the one. Hey, I thought you were the one, and neither one of them got to her. So what ends up happening is that they start trying to figure out where she can go on and be in the house. Maybe she's already back in the house already. So we of course go on to have the monster talking to Helga, and he goes on and takes a petal and or part of the flower and puts it down the well and says goodbye to it. And we have the kid that turns the monster. It's like, well, what should we throw in now? And interestingly enough, the monster's looking right at the camera, like, I'm wondering. You probably could figure it out, right? So the next thing we see after the parents are kind of like, well, hey, she must be upstairs. Like, she must be in the house somewhere. All of a sudden, both the monster and Helga are at this seesaw, and she wants him to sit down on the seesaw. He does. She goes catapulting into her window to fall into her bed. She reunites with her family. The family is like, "Oh my God, she's still alive," and or she's still alive. She's upstairs. She's okay. And so the two of them embrace and hug. So the next thing we see is a man, I believe, by the name of Harold, who's a blind man who in IMDb is just to be called blind man. But if anything, I did my due diligence and found out that Harold is Gene Hackman's character, and I had to go on and kind of rewatch a bit of the movie again just to get that name because that's how much I give it. So Harold goes on to meet with, of course, the monster. So we have Harold who's in desperate need of just having some kind of warmth of human comfort. And so there's to be a humming at the door. And so we of course have Harold who's be answering the door like, oh my God, like my answers have been, my prayers have been answered, and it's to go on to be uh, touching the monster and realize like, wow, oh, you must be a mute. Oh, you're a really big mute. Uh, Like you must have been the tallest kid in your class. So we go on to have Harold, who's to bring the man in and tells him to not say a word. So Harold and Monster here are to go on and seemingly have a bowl of a soup to be shared here, and consistently Harold goes on and is pouring the soup into the monster's lap, consistently having him groan about like it continuously following. No matter what the monster tries to do to adjust the bowl, it keeps falling in his lap. So after that, they then go on and we have Harold who states that, hey, you want to kind of share a bit of wine between the two of us? So Harold goes on is to have the ability of pouring into the monster's cup for wine, but then right after that, the two of them are to go on and share a toast, and then they clink glasses. They clink glasses so hard that the glass breaks in the monster's hand, and he's like, "Of course." So the monster can not even have the soup or even go on and have the wine. So then we have Harold that is to bust out some cigars. So the monster grabs the cigar, and so we have Harold who's to go on and have this candle, and the monster's to freak out about the fire. It's like, well, hey, no, it's okay. As Harold states, Harold goes on and uses the candle to light his cigar. Is like, yeah, see, like fire is our friend. So we go on to have Harold who's trying to light the monster's cigar instead of having the monster light his own cigar. So what happens is that Harold goes on to light the monster's finger, his thumb, instead of the cigar. So the monster starts freaking out. He quickly figures out a way to douse the flame of his finger, but still is to be just probably in pain by his burnt thumb and is to be enraged. And then he thrusts out the door because I'm sure like this guy is just a walking hazard of Harold, anyways. I want to get away from this guy. So Harold bursts through the door to try to get away, or the monster bursts through the door to try to get away from Harold because F that guy. And so we have Harold who is desperately crying out to the monster, hey, I was going to make an espresso. So the next thing we go on and see is that the monster is to be lured in by Frederick, who's under a disguise. I don't know why he had to be in a disguise. I don't think it really made a difference. As some hobo-ish character with a violin to lure the monster into a net-like plan where they go on and they try to again give the monster a sedative, and then the monster falls over on the three of them, and Igor ends up kind of getting the brunt of having the monster fall on him. So they bring the monster back. They put him in a safe area, and so Frederick turns to the group here and is to go on and tell them, "Hey, I'm going to go on and I'm going to go into this room and I'm going to try to talk to them, talk to him, talk to the monster, and like I'm going to try to see what I can get out of him. So like whatever you do, like no matter what I say, no matter how much I beg, so on and so forth. Like, do not open this door." So Frederick goes into the door, and immediately when when Frederick goes in there, the monster scares him, and so Frederick turns to the door. It's like, "Let me out! Let me out! Get me the hell out of here!" What's the matter with you people? I was joking. Don't you know a joke when you hear one? So, uh, Jesus Christ, let me out! And so Inga is almost tempted to want to go on and try to get to the door, but Frau Bruher is like, no, like slaps her away. So Frederick is like, open the goddamn door or I'll kick your rotten heads in. Mommy! And then so we have the monster that is grabbing these chains and flinging them. And so Frederick is going to realize, like, hey, I have to come up with some plan. So Frederick turns to the monsters like, hello, handsome. You're a good looking fellow, you know. Uh, uh, People laugh at you. People hate you. But why do they hate you? Because they're just jealous. Uh, you look like a boyish, or look at your boyish face. Uh, Look at your sweet smile. Do you want to talk about physical strength? Do you want to talk about sheer muscle? Do you want to talk about the Olympian ideal? You're a god. And so Frederick is going on and having this guy just so full of himself that he's kind of turning his head like he used to be like the American dream and a Superman and so on and so forth. Like, yeah, like, so. And so Frederick goes on and says that, like, well, hey, you're not evil, you're good. And so the monster goes on and is to be crying into Frederick's arms, like, well, you're a nice boy, you're a good boy, you're mother's angel, and I want the world to know. And so the further and further that both the monster and Frankenstein are to go on and come to this realization of what they're going to go on and be bound to do here, that Frederick is to want to go on and teach this monster and 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 show him how to walk and think, and that together that they will go on and that they will have a much more significant scientific contribution than the creation of fire. So Inga ends up yelling to Frederick if Frankenstein, like, are you okay? And we of course have Frankenstein is like, my name is Frankenstein, and so he kind of gives into his heritage. So the next thing we see here is the sold out uh uh Bucharest Academy of Science, whatever that means, Bucharest. Uh, so we have this sold out thing, and so we of course go on and have this announcer make his way to tell everybody that the show is about to start, and that to realize that Frankenstein has gone on to have seemingly a family that is to be either famous or infamous, and that either way they are going to go on and bring out this creature and so on and so forth. So we have Frederick that comes out here and is to kind of build up this monster that is reanimated dead tissue, and people are to go on and start laughing at him, and so uh, that he is to still set this up, that is to have this be proof that there is a gateway to immortality. So the Frankenstein monster is to go and get revealed as everyone is starting to freak out here, as the monster is kind of slowly walking its way into uh, further parts of the stage here. So Frederick is to go on and beg everybody to please be seated for the safety of everyone here. So here's where we go on and we have Frederick, who is to try and tell everybody how in control he is of the monster by having his uh, feet move from heel to toe, and is to go on and do this bit of walking here frontwards and backwards. Like, oh, okay, all right, okay. So then after that, they go on and they break out the dance number, which is to be playing on the Ritz, and then they have the monster kind of be doing this kind of just wild, just kind of winged like thing here. Like I would go on and really like stretch out my hands, but like if anything, I'm just kind of sore from yesterday. So yeah, that's not gonna work out. So at one point, a part of the stage lights is to go on and burst into flame, to where the monster is to go on and freak out. So Frederick is to try to douse the frames and is to try to get uh, the performance back ongoing. But by then, it's too late, and Frederick is to try to like, okay, one, two, three, four, and so Frederick is to try and go on and do continue on the dance number, but the music isn't playing, and so Frederick is to go on and look at the monster like, well, hey, like, are you trying to ruin me? Are you trying to make a fool out of me? So we then go on and have people starting to throw lettuce and cabbages and fruit and what have you, all at the stage, and we go on to again have Frederick who's like, well, for safety's sake, don't humiliate him. So we get to the point where Frankenstein is going on and getting very upset, going into the crowd, and Frankenstein is to kind of fall backward and to kind of be kind of knocked out here because the monster had accidentally kind of elbowed him in the face and kind of knocked him out by accident. So we have at one point where the monster is to grab a person, and then that leads to a bunch of police officers grabbing the monster and hauling him out. They chain him up by the neck here as people are heckling him uh, and making fun of him. So we have Frederick and Inga realize that the monster has been forced to be chained in a cage, and the two of them are to go on and feel terrible. And we have Frederick who's desperately realizing that there could uh, have needing Frederick to find a way to equalize the monster's brain, spinal fluid, and maybe that can go on and be the answer, and that he can go on and be right as rain. But how are they going to go on and figure that out before it's too late? So Inga is going on and telling Frederick not to torture himself to try to figure out what the answer could go on and be. And we have Inga that is hoping that maybe she can give, of course, our good doctor a bit of release from all the tension that he's been having lately, and maybe a little peace. And Frankenstein is like, well, maybe there's something because I've been banged by my fiance in quite a bit of time here. So the next thing we see is Frau Brucher, who is to go on and make her way to finding both Frankenstein and both Inga, who are in the bed, almost naked. And Frau Brucher is to give a letter to both Frankenstein and Inga that uh, that Frederick's fiancée Elizabeth is making her way back to, of course, see uh, Frederick Frankenstein, and it's only just she could be here at any second. So we have Verbrucher that goes on and is to tell both Frankenstein, it's like, and Inga, like, hey, maybe you guys should put on some clothes. Maybe you should put on a tie. So Elizabeth via car is making her way to Frederick, and It's like, oh, darling, darling, surprise, surprise. Love me, love you. Let's turn in, darling. So we have Frederick that goes on to turn to pay the driver as Igor comes in to then grasp Elizabeth as if he is to go on and be looking for her because technically Frederick is going on and dealing with Inga and their seemingly possible relationship. So Igor is to go on and eventually say his kind of upsetness that Frederick is kind of dancing between two women, so to speak. But anyways, so but Igor thrusts into the arms of Elizabeth to say, "Surprised? Yes. Love me? Well, well, let's turn in." Uh, and then so Frederick comes on back, and then Igor is like, "Say nothing. Act casual." So we have Elizabeth making her way back into some introductions here of Elizabeth and Inga and so on and so forth. So we now finally have Frederick mention that Elizabeth is to be his fiancee, and Elizabeth is asking of like, well, hey, what exactly do you do? It's like, oh, what exactly do I do? It's like, well, I'm an assistant for Frankenstein's laboratory, and Inga goes on to be like, well, yeah, we recently just had a really fascinating discussion quite recently, and then Frederick was like, oh, no, 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 like let's not get into that. Like, if anything, like Elizabeth is very tired. Like Igor, get the bags, and so and Igor is thinking like, well, yeah, I'll definitely get the bags, and he's going on thinking that the bags is a metaphor for like Elizabeth being a bag. So he like grabs onto uh, her little wolf fur and he like bites into it, and so Frederick is like, no, the luggage. It's like, oh, the luggage. So gets the luggage, and then that's where Igor kind of throws some shade into to Frederick about the whole dancing between the two women thing. Uh, hey, if you need help with the girls, and then he kind of walks by. So the monster goes on and is to be with one of the policemen. And the policeman is going on and consistently lining these matches in front of the monster, consistently trying to tease him with how he hates fire. And so eventually, how this goes on to be here is that at some point the monster goes on and flips out about the fire as the cop gets further and further closer to the monster, so close that the monster goes on and starts choking the police officer, and then he frees himself and then goes on to escape. A lynch mob is to be outside Inspector Camp's office to where we have Inspector Camp that is to go back into the thing that he had gone on to say when he is to be introduced in this movie, where he's to go on and say, a riot is an ugly thing. Uh, and I think that this is just about time we had one. And one person to be screaming, kill the monster! And Kemp is going and say, "We will curse the day that he was born a Frankenstein." Uh, so, and then everybody goes on like, "What?" Then he's like, "He will curse the day he became a Frankenstein." Frankenstein. Oh yeah, Frankenstein. Okay. So we now go on to our regularly scheduled program to have Frederick, who is now with Elizabeth, desperately trying to go on and getting some intimacy between her and him, and she's having none of it. And we even have Elizabeth at some point who's going to go on and tell Frederick is like, well, hey, don't you have another bedroom set up somewhere for you? And so the further and further like this intimacy is to start here between the two of them, more Elizabeth is pushing away to, of course, logically have, of course, Elizabeth say that it's like, well, hey, like, shouldn't we be thinking about our wedding night to just hold off until then? And then we go on to, of course, have Frederick is like, okay, all right, like, and then she's like, okay, good night, goodbye, love you, or good night, love you, and he's like, what love you, oh yeah, whatever. So realizing that he's like, hey, I can go on and have that other woman kind of bestooked whenever I want, but if her, like, I really have to figure out a way to to really figure out how I can go on and kind of trick her, persuade her, but if even like she's not falling for it, like so easily that Inga did, as she was open to it, she opened up her legs. Yeah, so we go on here to have Frankenstein leave here, and now Elizabeth is going on against her mirror, and she is to go on and be singing. Um, he has he has looses the faithful lighting of a terrible swiftest sword. I have no idea if this is the right tone or not. His truth is marching on. Yeah, I think that's probably it, right? So glory, oh, it's glory, glory, hallelujah. Why didn't I think of that? I knew the rhythm, but I was like like this song like I kind of quickly forgot about it. So as she's going on and singing this, we have the monster that creeps up behind her. The lynch mob is making their way from this bridge, as now the monster has Elizabeth in his clutches, carrying her away. As the lynch mob seemingly is in the woods, one of the guys smacks into this tree as he obviously couldn't see it, and so he kind of like pushes away from the tree to like, oh, okay, all right. So, God, there's so much going on in this movie. So Elizabeth is to, I guess, to have been frightened so much so that her parts of her hair has gone on to change to white, as if this is to be Sweeney Todd, or is to also be how iconically the uh, the Miss Frankenstein is to go on and look fairly often, as well as also the kind of the the corn dog looking haircut that eventually Elizabeth will also go into. Also, yeah, like people would go on and contribute to like the white stripes in the hair as like being hit by lightning, or also to contribute it to be like Rogue from X-Men. Why did I go into all that? Because I did. Because I just like to talk to hear myself talk. Yes. God, I am really of stupidity. I apologize. For anybody who's still watching this, I do appreciate. Thank you for going on and doing so. But if you don't, it's okay. I could really understand. Uh, anyways, so we have the monster who is to go on and look at Elizabeth and is to start to push back his coat that he's to go on and have. And we have Elizabeth who is to go on and tell the monster that she's not afraid of him. And my father is very rich, and he has the world at his fingertips, and he'll have me back by 11:30. Or she says, I have to be back by 11:30. I'm expecting a very important call. That one was pretty good. I liked that one. Uh, and so as she's consistently trying to talk to this monster. He doesn't say anything. He just and so she's like, "Speak! Why don't you speak?" And so as the monster gets closer and closer to this woman, getting almost on top of her, she's like, well, "What are you doing? Like, I don't know. Are you serious? Like, I can't just." And I'm afraid. And then she goes on and looks at his schwanz, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And he's like, "Ugh." So, and here's where we go on and have the thrusting of the Frankenstein and Elizabeth, and she starts belting out this sweet mystery of life. At last I found you. At least I know the secrets of it all. Kemp is going on and trying to find the monster with the townfolk, and here's the goofy thing that doesn't make sense here. I get it, like it's a joke of after some intimacy, you were to go on and share a cigarette, but this doesn't make sense because if you think about it, somebody would have to have lit these cigarettes. That would incorporate fire. That would incorporate Frankenstein to get freaked out. Doesn't make sense. As well as also, wouldn't have the Frankenstein monster gotten freaked out by just the cigarette because it looks like fire? It's just me. Anyways, the two of them take a cigarette drag, and Elizabeth is to ask the monster, "Penny, for your thoughts." Uh, and so the monster is to seemingly be quite possibly interested in another go about. And Elizabeth is just like, "Well, okay, like 7 is my lucky number." And so the monster is to go on into the arms back into Elizabeth, and then all of a sudden, he is to overhear the music that is to drag him on to be back to the castle because they go on and they have this huge, uh, like, uh, like I want to say horn, but a thing that is to go on and blast this music, to go on and lure the monster there. If you see it in the movie, you'll see like this huge horn of a thing that is to like kind of have the violin kind of be played to where like it can kind of push the sound out to go out to larger. It's kind of like a megaphone in a way. It's kind of the 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 prehistoric or pre megaphone kind of approach of using a horn to try to your sound go out, like how cheerleaders have that. It's kind of the same thing. So as we go on to have the monster who's lured by the music, we have of course Elizabeth who's kind of upset. It's like, "Oh yeah, after 7 or 8 quick ones, you're like all the other men. Um, like, don't you boast and brag, and you better keep your mouth shut." And then as he goes on to further leave, she's like, "Oh, I think I love him." So as this horn is to be blaring out this music as it's to go on and play, and even there's to be a addition to this sound as it seems that Igor has a French horn in the mix. The monster is to be consumed by this sound so much so that it crawls up the castle, as the castle seems to have this unusual bit of wood pieces or just somehow things that are go on and make it so easy for the monster to crawl up this castle. Instead of them just going on and opening the door for him, luring him into the castle, that just seemed like a no-brainer, but I guess not a no-brainer enough. So he crawls all the way up the castle, and at one point, like Frederick is to go on and tell them to not help him, and then he almost falls over, and so they're like, "Oh, quick, catch him! Come on!" So they go on, they get him, and I think they also go on to give him another sedative, and he passes out here. So they go on, they do the experiment. They're now um having the doctor give up a portion of his brain to the monster to kind of even the monster out, forcing then Frederick to also get a part of the monster in his own brain as just kind of some kind of evening out of either intelligence or whichever. So they go on and they do this experiment, and so we have the mob that is thrusting their way through uh these what knocker doors. And so we have Inspector Kemp, who's to go on and be the battering ram here, as his hand bizarrely, his wooden hand, is to be the battering ram, which I thought was kind of just hilarious here. Even though obviously you can see his hand buckle as he consistently is thrusted midst the door, because of course it would. So, but eventually they go on and they thrust the door, as eventually Kemp is kind of leading the charge of all this. So Igor and Inga are to realize that they need to precisely have this experiment stop at a certain amount of seconds, like no more, no less, precisely, or like things go horribly awry here. So as the lynch mob makes its way into this laboratory, going on to then have a lot of people uh, running amok within this laboratory, almost destroying bits and pieces of it. We then go on and have the lynch mob grabbing Frederick and hauling him away here. And someone is to go on and speak up to say, put that man down. And we're like, okay, who's speaking up here? And it's none other than the monster. So the monster goes on and is to be unhooked here. And he starts speaking to the people. And we have Inspector Kemp, who's like, just who do you think that you could order these people around? And we have the monster speaks like, well, I am the monster. And as long as I can remember, people hated me. You looked at my face and my body, and you ran in horror. In my loneliness, I decided that I could not uh, inspire love, which was my deepest hope. I would instead cause fear. I live because the poor, half crazed genius has given me a life. He alone held an image of me as someone beautiful when it would have been easy enough to stay out of danger. He used his own body as a guinea pig to give me a calmer brain and a somewhat more sophisticated way of expressing myself. Well, this is, of course, an entirely different situation. Uh, so this is the constable or the inspector talking. As a leader of this community, may I be the first to offer you my hand in friendship. The two of them, of course, shake hands, and accidentally the monster completely takes off the inspector's wooden hand, to where he realizes that his wooden hand has broken off. So he's like, "All right, to the lumber yard," and so everybody leaves and goes to the lumber yard, or the lumber yard. As Frau Brugger is crying, and she's like, "Oh." So the next thing we see is that the monster and Inga are checking on Frederick to see if, like, hey, is he still alive? Like, is he okay? So the next thing we go on and see is both Frederick and both Inga had gone on to get married. Things have really had some passing of time here. And so the two of them are to be Mr. and Mrs. Frankenstein, and they are to go on and seemingly be crowning their wedding night. So we of course go on to have Frederick, who's to try and take off his hat, and Inga's like, "Oh no, keep your hat on." And so we consistently have Inga, who's to kind of freshen up here, and as Frederick is to try to take off some bits of his clothes, he is to keep remembering that he needs to keep the hat either on his head or just in his hand. And he consistently reminds Inga that he's kept the hat on. And so we then go on to find that Elizabeth and both Monster have gone on to have a bit of a relationship themselves, that they are both going to go on and share the bed together. And so Elizabeth is going on and telling the monster here about something that Elizabeth's father had gone on to put on just for the monster, and if he liked it or not. And he's like, mm-hmm, yeah, like, yeah, definitely. So Elizabeth ends up kind of showing her appearance here, where she's wearing this nightgown. She has her hair kind of done up in this kind of corn dog, like very uh, very fun, just kind of visual here, and it's like, tss, and then she's like, tss, 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 and then she ends up kind of her butt, and we of course go on to have the monsters looking directly at the camera. It's like, all right, I guess I'm gonna be having some humping tonight. So as we have Frederick making his way back into the bed with Inga, Inga's to be questioning Frederick what exactly, if to try to make a calmer mind out of the monster, like what did that go on and do to exactly Frederick? And Frederick is to go on and is to I think in the background he goes on and hears the music or something along that nature as it's playing, and he goes on into the rampage and or rampage of passionate lovemaking, and Inga is like, oh my god, I can't believe it, and then she starts belting out the song, and that's how the movie wraps up and finishes. And I'm gonna get that heck out of here because this movie took way too long for me to talk about. But if anything, F it. Like just I just enjoy doing these reviews. So um, regardless of how a lot of people probably go on and probably not check these out because of the length of them, I don't care because I want to go on uh, and just say every bit of them because of just stuff that it's just stuff that I'm passionate about, stuff that I enjoy, and regardless of how it all breaks down, by the end of it, of just like, hey, however long I can go on and just have people just interested in at least some of these reviews instead of all of them, and or just can find people that are to enjoy stuff that I was to have gone on and enjoy also. That's the bigger thing here. So with that said, I hope to go on and probably feel that I'm probably going to need to review more Frankenstein films. I hope to go on and do the original Frankenstein movie uh, because I think the only black and white thing that I've ever gone on and done was actually the Creature of Black Lagoon. I was so tempted to go on and cover the black and white The Wolfman movie because I'd gone on and covered the 2010 one. So I thought, I was like, well, I could probably go on and probably try and do some The Wolfman things, or maybe even the Abbott and Costello stuff just for shits and giggles. But anyways, yeah, maybe Abbott and Costello could be just fun to do because I could probably go on and tag the Abbott and Costello things in here just to see if it's worth it. I don't know if I've got maybe I've gone on and done that in the past, where I've done some things with Abbott and Costello's tags and stuff, and maybe they went nowhere. But if anything, I can just kind of do any number of movies. I don't know. It's kind of very random how I about going at this. Like it seems that every day, it seems on that specific day is what I plan to just kind of come up with, because there's a lot of times where I'll make a lot of uh, ideas of what I'm going to do, and then it completely changes specifically for that day, where I'm just kind of like, you know what, I'm feeling this movie, or I want to go on and finally get to this or accomplish this, and like it eats up a lot of my day just to make that final decision what's to be the best for the channel, I feel, even though the end result is what it is. So I'm gonna get that out of here because I'm rambling now, and I've already done that for a couple hours, so I'm gonna get that out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching these. Thank you for being a part of this channel. And I can thank everybody, and I have gone on to do that today, but I really do mean it. I really do appreciate it. But if anything, goodbye.